Hi, welcome to another Tech Tip Tuesday by Sep2. I'm James Woodward, Head of Pre-Sales, and I'm joined today by Mike.
Hi everyone, Mike Goodwin here, one of the directors at Step2. Great to be joined with James, talking today about email security.
Yes, so Mike, email security. It's been something that's been around for a long time now. We've had email for a number of years, but what do you think the current state of email security is? Where are we with it?
Well, I think in a lot of senses, the basic element of this has become commoditized, and it is very simple these days to have the most basic elements of email security. The vast majority of customers that we deal with are either on the road to or already completed Office 365 or G Suite transitions. And what that means for sort of IT admins and end users in a whole is that the legacy of how they've had to deal with email security across maybe the last 10 years has fundamentally shifted.
Yeah, so speaking of that, so traditionally you'd have an on-prem Exchange server. In front of that Exchange server, you might have an email filter that sat in your DMZ.
Yeah.
But obviously, with Office 365, that's not the case. So, what sort of flows are we seeing now for email? Like, what are the traffic patterns we're seeing?
Yeah, there's obviously been a change in the last few years as people have moved their email systems into the cloud and taken advantage of Office 365, and they're no longer wanting to have that on-premise MTA. They don't want their mail flows now to be on-prem and then still having to process that and then passing that up to Microsoft or to Google if that's the case. And so people are re-looking at and re-architecting their email flows. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to say we're going straight into Microsoft. Microsoft themselves obviously have a lot of email security functionality built into Office and built into Outlook Online. But I still think there's a valid reason to be looking at a dedicated MTA type solution, a dedicated email filter, especially when we're talking about things beyond just spam. Outlook and Office have done a great job for years in terms of junk email processing. But I think when you're starting to look into the threat side of email security, that's something that Microsoft as a whole are still, in my view at least, somewhat behind. That's not to say that that won't be the case in the future, but certainly that's something that, as it stands at the moment, there's still very much a dedicated email security solution space.
I think that's a good point you make there. Spam has been around since email existed. That people send millions of spam emails. It's one of the largest volumes of traffic on the internet is spam emails. That's
Mm-hmm.
been around for a long time. But what do you think has evolved in regards to sort of unwanted email traffic though over the last
Yeah.
few years? What are we seeing in that space?
Well, I guess phishing was something that really sort of picked up years ago, and has almost become synonymous now with the same thing as what spam is. The sort of the enter your credentials here, your passwords reset, or your passwords expired, reset it here type of thing. And I think users as a whole are probably getting to the point of knowing what is and what isn't real there. But I think the newer element of that is very much I think the term in the industry is sort of spear phishing. Is that much more targeted impersonation almost? We see it ourselves a number of times, 3 or 4 times a day. I'll get notified of an email that's been blocked, that's been impersonating myself, trying to talk to one of my team members and trying to get them to do something as if they're talking like they're me. It's that sort of spear phishing as a whole, but then I think the other side of that is the more generic threat elements in terms of attached documents and ransomware and the whole easy to ingress elements through email if you don't have that ingress protected in a good way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we've seen the evolution of threats coming over emails from, viruses coming in via an email just as an executable, which was meant to
Mm-hmm.
be Christmas lights flashing around your desktop. And now we're seeing it embedded into encrypted zip files, which have macro office documents sat inside them. Stuff that just defeats standard email protection. Stuff that needs a much higher level of emulation
Absolutely.
which are definitely, I think, another point where we see that these sort of more dedicated MTA products are giving benefit over what the traditional or the included services with Office and with Gmail include.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and that's the type of thing that we've been seeing in the normal sort of network security, cyber security space for a few years now as well. Is that sort of emulation and actually trying to understand what the attachment is doing or what the file is trying to do. And I think the even more modern view of that is actually removing that embedded content, removing the active content, and effectively wrapping files via email in sort of a protected PDF view, so that regardless of what could be there, I'm sort of just removing that threat. If it can't run anything, it can't do any bad.
And I think that is a key thing, is that over the last few years, I mean, I've seen it especially where there's been so much training, so much awareness on spam, on phishing, even on spear phishing, trying to let you know how to identify these threats. Um, but even as trained IT personnel, we've been in cybersecurity between us probably for longer than a lot of people have been alive. Yeah, even so, it's easy when you're not paying too much attention to just go accidentally click on something, and a
Mm-hmm.
couple of seconds later you're like, oh no, hang on, was that what I
Yeah,
thought
I've done
it
that.
was? So removing the ability from users to even interact with it is such a key point, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's you take away the ability for users to infect themselves, because it doesn't matter how good your users are, everyone can fall foul occasionally.
That's it. It's removing the ability for the user to make a mistake, because users will make mistakes. That's not to be doubted. But if we've removed the ability for a malicious file to even exist on a user's device, it's gone, it's disappeared. We no longer have that risk. And when we can do this now, talking back against the sort of the mail flows, we some of these systems, they don't actually sit in line in the traditional sense in terms of MTA to MTA connections. We've developed beyond that. We're into API integrations now. We're integrating into Office 365 or G Suite via APIs. We can take copies and we can scan email and the content within it, and remove it from a user's inbox, and we can remove it from a user's inbox after the fact. And so we can manually review something that the system's picked up as maybe questionable, identify that it is spam or that it is spear phishing, or that it is some element of not good in general, and we can proactively then remove that across all of our users' inboxes.
Yeah, and I think that shows the evolution of how these products are working, shows how easy they are to consume now as well. You don't need to put in a costly process where everyone hold on, I'm about to change our MX records to point to a new
Mm.
system. It's all done by mail flow rules. So even something as simple as just doing a proof of concept on these products can take minutes to set up, and you can get reports out of it showing here's what's happening on your network. So it doesn't have to be a big intrusive operation.
No, I think it's the same general idea as the shift to Office 365. How long would it take for someone to build and implement an Exchange system? And if you were to do that properly with the different elements of Exchange and the front end servers and the back end databases and everything else, and what's the process now of signing up to Office 365? It's 5 minutes and you've got an email system working. And so that same sort of turnkey solution for the email security is absolutely the same. And I think that all of the vendors that we work with that provide this type of protection really are addressing it in that way. It's making it easy, making it consumable for the end users. The element of sort of commoditization that I mentioned earlier is still there to a degree, and you can almost rely upon what you get for free, what you get integrated with your Office or your G Suite account to do the basics, and then you need to be thinking really about what elements do you need to enhance, what bits do you want above and beyond what you get included, and where can that come from. And I think that also transitions out into the other elements of sort of SaaS solutions. Office and Outlook Online is only one portion of Office 365. And so the fundamental shifts that we have across the other components of that as well have the same problems to address.
Exactly. Yeah. How do we stop our employees accidentally, storing virus content on our OneDrive or inside SharePoint, for example? There are plenty of places for things to run and hide now, and as you say, traditional security is not keeping up with scanning things that are online only.
Exactly. The SharePoint and the OneDrive, that's kind of replaced in a lot of organisations what was just a file server, and on that file server you would have had some form of antivirus. Well, that doesn't exist anymore now, so you kind of have a two-pronged approach. That's still consumed at the endpoint, so you're still consuming those files and systems, But you've also got now with Office 365 and others the ability to use a non-domain joined or non-IT owned to endpoint. And so what protections are on that? You no longer have that information. So again, centralizing that back on the cloud system itself to be able to put those types of protections in, again via APIs, at the source to make sure that the files and folders that we're saving into SharePoint or OneDrive or even into Teams directories now are having the same types of protections and also elements of DLP as well. Because with all of this, we're loosening that sort of perimeter edge where we're moving data outside of our network and we're making it accessible by anyone anywhere. And so how are we managing that risk of data loss?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things to take away from this is that although yes, our content storage for email and documents might have got out of our network, might have got outside of our traditional perimeter, it doesn't have to be outside our control. Yeah, there are plenty of vendors, let's say people that we work with, that have shown that they can still keep up with this, still keep up with the moving trends that are happening in the industry, and more importantly, they've made it actually a lot easier for you to consume. So even if it's just from a point of view where you just like to have a view of what maybe is you're not currently seeing, they've made it so that is more simple than ever for you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me today, James. I think we've hopefully given our viewers an idea of what we can do and how we work in this space. I'd encourage anyone who's been listening and is interested in this further to have a look on our website, get in touch and speak to one of us about how we can help you in your email and other online SaaS application security.
Definitely. That's great. Thank you, Mike, and goodbye, everyone.